Okay, Creighton. So how about you just start off by telling people, who you are and maybe what you're known for?
Yeah, sure. My name's Creighton Olsen. I actually started my esports career as a spectator at the GSL, the Global StarCraft League, when I lived in Seoul, South Korea. I'm a pale, white, bald guy, so the camera always found me in crowd shots pretty easily. And I'd always do something goofy on camera. And then since I was enjoying StarCraft so much, I decided to start commentating. And for the last about 2.5 years now, I've been a StarCraft commentator. I've been doing it full time for about 6 months.
Mm.
And so I'm doing casting and commentating for StarCraft 2 on the professional and amateur level.
Yeah, the I actually saw the video. I was looking back at some of the old stuff, and there was a clip that I think it might have been one of the times you were pulled out the crowd in GSL, and you were like doing an interview. I think it was maybe on MVP or something like this, and you hear Testosis in the background, like just sort of saying, "This guy, he knows he's. I'm thinking of replacing you." And then you said something in Korean as well, and he was just like, "This is brilliant." I'd never seen that before.
Oh,
That was really good.
oh yeah, it was fantastic. That's one of my proudest memories. They pulled me out of the crowd to interview. It was about Maru. He was playing
Oh,
Zest in
it's
one of the
marvelous.
finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a big Maru fan. I still am. And I was just chatting with the person, chatting with the interviewer. The interviewer was really worried because her English wasn't great. She was like a written translator,
Hmm.
and they pulled her out for the spoken interview. So she was a little nervous. So for about 30 minutes before that interview, she was like, okay, I'm going to ask you this question. What are you going to say? I'm going to ask you this question. What are you going to say?
Okay.
So I didn't have a lot of time to sort of like make up new responses. But yeah, at the very end, I just said, uh, Maru's name in Korean and then Whiting, so like go in Korean
Okay. Yeah.
basically. It's the easiest Korean thing you could ever say, and you can tell the crowd just ate it up. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it was like, what did she say again? She said something like, "Why do you think he's gonna win?" And you gave like a proper detailed response. It was like, or you said something like, "I like his playstyle. This is where he's gonna win." And then he asked the other guy like, "Who do you think's gonna win?" And he was like, "Zest," because he plays Protoss. And it was like, that was the end of.
You can tell who's had training on theater and improvisation
Yeah.
in the interviews like that for sure.
So how about we go back like a bit earlier? What like games as a kid, maybe things like that. Talk about like your origin story. Like what? How did you like go through to get to casting and stuff now?
Definitely. So I think a lot of people have like superhero origin stories where they're like, "Oh, my brother always beat me at video games as a kid. My parents were really supportive," and
Hmm.
I feel like I have like a super villain origin story where I was denied video games for my entire youth. My parents hated them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in central Kansas, so kind of the middle of nowhere. And my parents were great. They just didn't like video games at all. They thought it was a waste of time, and they couldn't understand why I loved them. So I'll never forget. Like I bought an N64. It was the first video game thing I ever did. I worked during the summers, and I saved up all my money that I'd worked on during the summers to buy a Nintendo 64 and Harvest Moon 64 because that was the only game my mom would allow me to play because GoldenEye was too violent. Mario Kart would encourage us to be like illegal drivers later in life, so she didn't like Mario Kart. Like there was a whole litany of games she didn't love. So I chose N64 and I chose Harvest Moon. And eventually my mom started not liking it because the end of the day in Harvest Moon 64, you can go to the pub and get like a glass of wine. And she was like, come on, this is ridiculous. This you're going to be a miscreant when you grow up. The worst part though was that are you familiar with Harvest Moon?
Yeah,
Did you
sorry,
ever
I know
play?
what it is. Yeah, yeah. I'll put it on the
Okay,
screen so other
perfect.
folk can know what it is as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you missed out on Harvest Moon 64, oh man. But so it runs on like a day cycle, and at the end of the day is when you save, and the days take about 25 minutes, give or take. My mom limited my video game time to 20 minutes a day. So about half of the time that I play Harvest Moon 64, I'd like, water my crops and feed my animals and get to the end of a day. And then as I was like wrapping up and she would give me no warning. So because she was so disappointed that I was playing video games. She would just walk into the room and like
Off.
hit the reset button on the N64
Oh,
immediately.
wow.
So I cannot count how many days I would be like, no. Um,
I
so that
just,
was like how I grew up when I was a kid. I had to get my video game fixed at other kids' houses, and of course, then once I went to college, the gloves came off, and I was like, oh, this thing I was denied my entire life, I'm gonna do it now. And so I got to university and got really addicted to World of Warcraft, and actually got really competitive in PvE in World of Warcraft, and was like
okay.
NA rank top 10 DPS guy, and obviously did terribly in university because of it.
And is that
So
just like racing to kill mobs? Like you just try to kill the mob the fastest? Yeah.
Based on at the time, it was based on the meters from the damage amount you did on each boss.
Okay.
So now I think the competitive guys, they've built in like a speed run element to it in World of Warcraft, where all the dungeons have like are vaguely randomly generated, and there's a really exciting way to kill bosses really quickly. But back in 2007, 2008, when I was really competing, it was just you'd finish a fight and you'd post your damage meters online. And then you'd compare how much actual damage you did in the fight versus everybody else.
Oh, and that's how you won. Okay.
And that was the only way to like really be competitive. It's just like a convenient way to say that I was way too into World of Warcraft for all of university. And then I went out in the real world. I got some real jobs. I still gamed really casually, but not like very competitively until I moved to Seoul, South Korea. And then I started going to the GSL and diving way back deep into the StarCraft world that I'd been away from for so long.
Mm-hmm. So did you watch a lot of like the original like Brood War and stuff? Do you keep up with the competitive scene like throughout university and stuff, or?
So I missed Brood War for the most part. I didn't really catch Brood War. I played it. It was one of my formative games as a kid. I played it with one of my friends in his basement, and I like fell in love with it. Doing the big game hunters maps, the stupid maps where you just like no rush 20 minutes, build carriers, and then just murder each other. Oh, the best, absolutely. So I do a lot of that, and then I kind of fell off for a while. I played StarCraft 2 when it came out for about 2 or 3 years, and I followed it for a lot longer than that because I'm garbage at video games. Like unlike most people I'm sure you have on the cast who are professional players and stuff, I've always just been really bad at video games. So I love playing them; they're so much fun. But competitively, I'm just hot garbage. So I played for about 3 years, and I followed all the way through about end of Heart of the Swarm, early Legacy of the Void, and then I sort of fell off for a couple of years. And just other stuff took over. But then when you move back to Korea, the home of StarCraft and of esports, really, it's not hard to get back in.
Yeah, because it was like I remember reading somewhere it was like in Korea, majority of people there still watch original StarCraft, like ASL. Is that right? And then like everywhere else, like all the foreigners, they watch GSL more. I couldn't believe that when I heard that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know the exact numbers right now. I think it's shifting, and slowly StarCraft 2 is like changing. I don't know if it's more popular now, but it's getting there. I know the numbers are getting better. But yeah, when I'd go to the GSL studios, I was always amazed because I expected to be the only foreigner there. And eventually, the more and more I went, the more I realized, honestly, at the GSL studios in Korea, it's about a 60-40, 70-30 split between 60% Koreans and 30 or 40% foreigners, which you wouldn't expect from an event in the middle of South Korea.
No.
And the foreign fans are definitely... the ones I met, I'll refer to it sort of as the mecca of StarCraft 2, where you got to make the pilgrimage at least once in your life to the GSL studios to really experience it. So it's full of foreign fans.
I mean, I've kept up with GSL for so long. Like even, again, like I can relate to being terrible at video games, but loving just watching professionals and breaking down games in my head. It's great. But
Sure.
Yeah, like GSL is something I've watched for ages, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, like done DreamHack, things like that. But it's just the cost pretty much. It's so far away for us. But,
oh yeah, I know.
But yeah, it's crazy. It's on the bucket list definitely of something that just needs to be done. So how did it lead to like you breaking into actually doing the commentating? Because obviously like one thing a lot of people like to know is how do you make that step from just casually playing, casually watching to just jumping headfirst in?
Yeah, and jumping headfirst in is the right way to think about it, I think. I'd been going to the GSL for a while, and I wanted to get more involved in the StarCraft community because basically at the time I was like the local guide. Like if anytime somebody posted on Reddit like, oh, I'm going to Korea, how do I find the GSL or whatever? I was the guy who was like, hey, I live here. Meet me at this place. I'll get you there. So I've been doing that, but I wanted to do a little bit more. And I kind of had to think about my skill set and what I was good at. And I have a background in performing arts, and I thought, okay, maybe I can try this casting thing. I've never professionally cast anything before. And I started by casting. I would create in the game. I would create a what's called a peep mode game, which is where like 8 players will get in the game, and then at the beginning, everybody will volunteer, and 2 people will actually play, and the other 6 people will just watch and talk about the game like on the online chat. So I would start one of those lobbies, and I wouldn't tell anybody anything differently. So I'd get like 6 or 8 random people in. And then I'd say, oh, by the way, I'm casting this live on Twitch. You should come, if you want to watch the games and watch me talk about them, come watch me on Twitch. So it was just like random people who hopped into this obs mode game. And I did that for a good solid couple months, just to, cut my teeth and sort of understand the flow of the game and figure out what a cast really looked like.
Okay.
As someone who's, there's a huge difference between watching one and actually executing one. And so I sort of used that time to figure out what a cast looked like. And then from there, I had a couple people who had jumped into my games who were in little clans around North America. And a couple of them reached out to me and said, oh, hey, my clan's doing a clan war. We liked hopping into your stream. Do you want to cast that? So then I did a bunch of these like tiny, not even paid events.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. Little tiny things. But it took, it was probably a year or a year and a half before I had more than 25 people ever watching me at the same time. Like it took a long time.
Yeah,
to
it's
build
not
up.
like an overnight thing. Oh, that's cool. And so what's the range of different tournaments you've done? Like obviously I've seen you in a few different things, but just so like everyone knows like what else you've done.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate in the last year or so to have been asked to cast, I don't know about most, but certainly a plurality of the major StarCraft 2 events that have been going on. I just finished up last week doing the B stream for DreamHack, DreamHack Summer, which was great. But I was famously a fill-in caster for the GSL last year when I was in Korea. And then from there, I did the Asus Raj tournament. After that, I've been doing all the ESL events before then, usually as a B stream or community caster. But pretty much every major StarCraft event that's occurring, that's organized by a big professional company.
You've done it at some point.
I've been in some way involved, yeah.
Ah, that's cool. So out of all these like masses of games you've like commentated, what's like some of the ones that have like stood out for you?
Oh, man.
Big question.
That's like an impossible question. I don't know. It's impossible for two reasons. One, I'm really, really dumb. Like because if you ask this question of any of the other big famous StarCraft commentators, they will know like 2 or 3 examples. And I always love it when, like for example, like Rotterdam is talking about something, and he'll go, "Oh yeah, I saw this strategy in 2014 on Zelnanga Caverns with 2 players you've never heard of in an event you've forgotten about in a year that you were drunk for the entire year for or something," and they still know exactly like what the strategy was and everything. And I have trouble keeping track of most games, I think, because I'm still a little overwhelmed at the amount of StarCraft that I'm casting. Like, it hasn't settled into a routine for me yet. So I don't know if I could actually pick a best game that I've ever cast or like a favorite game that I've cast.
Okay.
I just try and think of the experiences that I've had, and there have been some really phenomenal ones. Doing the B stream for DreamHack was really cool. I think mostly because StarCraft right now is in such a healthy place, balance-wise, player-wise, strategy-wise. It seems like the whole game is just sort of blossoming again. And it's really exciting to see because I cast the B stream with Grant for 2 weeks. And we saw, I don't know, let's see, that'd be 5, 10. So we cast maybe, let's say 40 series. So 40 times 3 is 120-ish games. I don't know, whatever the number is. And of those games, I'd say maybe 10 or 15 of them were duds. Like a failed cannon rush
white watches or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then almost every other game was at least interesting, exciting, either a novel strategy or a well-executed push or players playing at the very tippy top of their game. And so DreamHack for me has been really memorable just because the consistent quality of the games has been really awesome.
Okay. Yeah, because I did see, I think it was Grant actually like tweeted saying that you weren't well or something over DreamHack 2. I was like, oh man, that would suck if you actually get to that point and you're like, I wait to stream a big stream and then you just get ill. I'd be like, I felt the pain when I read that tweet.
I was absolutely crushed. I had a little bit of a tickle in my throat the day before, and then I woke up at about 4 a.m. that morning, and I think I had a little bit of a fever, and my throat was really bad, and I had a bad headache still. And I had to message him and be like, oh man, because those are all the warning signs of COVID. Yeah. And I was really nervous. I didn't think I'd been exposed, but I was like, man, I work from a shared office complex.
Okay.
And I would have, if I worked from home, I would have powered through, taken some ibuprofen and gone for it. But since I work in a shared office complex, I was like, I can't expose anybody else in case. Yeah, okay. So it was heartbreaking. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. and tweet the organizer and be like, hey man, I'm really sorry. And then of course, by 9 a.m. I'd taken 2 ibuprofen. I felt fine, and I had to watch the whole stream in my pajamas.
You can't take the risk, though, can you? Yeah, that's good. Yeah. That's good.
They got M. Canning to fill in for me, and he's more handsome than I am anyway. So they definitely got their money's worth.
You got a good change out. That's all right.
Yeah.
So what about the best like RAN tournaments? Which ones do you feel like? Because obviously they're pretty big tournaments. Which ones are like, really well ran? Something that's just like really comfortable as a caster.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, well, every tournament's a little bit different, and it's really awesome. It's really interesting because I've mostly done B stream stuff,
Hmm.
which is this really unique bubble. If you're on the A stream, I think you have probably more insight into that because I
Hmm.
know for DreamHack, for example, the A stream people had to wake up 2 hours before the event to do like mic checks, timing checks, broadcast checks, cameras, audio, all that stuff because all the events are online these days.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think they had a very different experience than us on the B stream, who we have no production people, we have no audio engineers, we have like no one. The organizers basically said, "Hey, here's your games. Hop into the lobby. Here's some assets to throw up on your screen. Good luck."
Yeah.
And that's how almost every tournament that I've done for the B stream is. They send you the assets pack and just say, "Make it work." And I think that's how the foreign language streams usually do as well, just because they're so focused on that A stream presentation that they don't have time to really throw us any more info. So
Okay.
I don't know if I have as much insight into that as other people do, but every event that I've done so far has been, I mean, for the most part, competently run and very few problems. I think if you're a viewer, you see things very differently than if you're a commentator.
Hmm.
If you're a viewer, like when I'm watching a tournament, I get antsy. If there's a 5 minute break, I'm like, oh man, a 5 minute break,
Yeah.
come on. Whereas if you're adminning the event, 5 minutes is barely enough time to get, and that's when when I'm doing my own tournaments, I need a 5 minute break just to get my players in the lobby and get them doing their vetoes. And while they're doing the vetoes, I go to the bathroom and get some more water and then come back. And by the time I come up, they've had a problem with their vetoes and I got to fix that. And it just feels so frantic.
Yeah, as a viewer, it's like, well, again, people do just go, look, just give me the next game. But it's also, whenever I see two commentators, it's even worse if you're solo casting. But when you see dead space of like someone has an issue with a game, like I'll watch quite a few pro scenes. So even like League of Legends is a good example. Like if they have an issue, I'll go to four people at an analyst desk and they'll chat. And you can talk strats with four people for a long time. But if you're like solo casting a game and there's dead space, it's like, man, you've got to be the chattiest person in the world to try and fill that dead space. It's like people are like in chat like slagging off this person, and it's like, I mean, no one could do that. It's impressive almost.
It's a challenge. We had I remember one of the times I cast the GSL with no regret. We had a pause. They had some keyboard issue, but it was a 40-minute game. So which is for StarCraft is super long.
Yeah, it's long, yeah.
And if you're a commentator, once it gets to like 25, 30 minutes or so, there's not much else to say about the game. Because at that point, it's like everybody has max armies, and they're just kind of like positioning around the map, and you're just, as a commentator, going, well, he's going around the north side.
Yeah.
Nope, he's not. He's not going to attack it. Okay, he's going back home. Oh, he's trying around the south side this time. No, he's not going to do it. Okay, he's going back home. So you've said just about everything, and then after about 30 minutes, we had to cut to a break with No Regret and I. And we'd never casted before. We'd never like had a conversation before, but we're on camera in front of 25,000 people trying to fill this dead air where we've already said everything we could possibly say. And if I recall correctly, by the end of it, we're talking about if a bear and a tiger fought each other, who would win the fight? That kind of nonsense.
Yeah, that's what you want, though. That's what you need. Yeah.
Just to keep it light. It was super fun. But yeah, I mean, every event I've done for the most part has been really well organized, and
that's good.
I feel like esports in general, and especially StarCraft, are at a point where organizers know what they're doing, and there's not a lot of unknowns anymore. It's not like the early days where they're like, well, keyboard broke. I guess we replay the whole series because there's
one thing that's wrong. Yeah, I totally get it. So you also mentioned there you thought like StarCraft is in quite a good space as well. I mean, because I remember again talking about dead space, like Heroes of the Storm. Heroes of the Storm. Sorry. Jesus, man. The second patch, Heart of the Swarm. Sorry, God.
The other HOTS.
Too much game, man. Too much game.
Why on earth would you release Heart of the Swarm?
Sorry, it's definitely
Heroes of the Storm. Terrible.
Yeah, sorry. Here's the story. Yeah, sorry. When it was out, probably the worst, or maybe one of the worst parts of like StarCraft probably was when Swarm hosts, and they would get in these small movement games, and again you'd sort of feel the pain of like the chat from commentators would be like he's repositioned over here. And again, it'd be like Terran Zerg matches that are just proper stacked up tanks, stacked up Swarm hosts. That'd be it. So, I mean, that's probably one of the, I would say, in my opinion, one of the worst points that the game's had professionally wise. What, obviously now, I think is a good spot. Some of the baneling changes, oracles, things like that. So, What do you think about it? What like parts do you think are good, and which parts do you think you change?
Yeah, and game design is this whole other monster that I think people don't really consider when they're talking about StarCraft. People think a lot about how the game affects them, and they don't really think about how the game has been built to incentivize them to do specific things. I studied economics in undergraduate and graduate.
Oh, okay.
And game design is just like basically applied behavioral economics, where you're trying to convince people to do something they wouldn't otherwise do by rewarding them for doing it. And I know that StarCraft Balance team has clearly been studying, or I mean, obviously they work for a AAA game designer, but they've clearly been studying their game design really well to pull StarCraft out of the position it was in Heart of the Swarm, going from, as you said, this play style that rewarded you for not taking any actions. There were these low risk units that were high reward units. That as long as you built them, the game could go out very long, and eventually you would do damage. Very hard to attack into. But now with the changes they've been making, especially in Legacy of the Void, with some of the new units they've added on and some of the new strategies that's sort of unlocked for players, they're encouraging more aggression. They're encouraging more of a mid-game play. So like if it goes to late game, great, but for the most part, you don't want to end the game early game because it's just too risky for the most part.
Yeah.
And clearly their design decisions have been very well calculated, and I'm really pleased that they've gone so far out of their way to like make sure that we're being incentivized to play, or that pros are being incentivized to play these games that are more engaging, not just for the professional players, but also for the viewers.
Yeah. Well, that was it. It was also just nowhere near as exciting to watch. I'd still watch the GSL games because I just love it, even if they are boring. But I think it did lose quite a bit of viewers during that period. And again, it was when like a lot of other esports were sort of kicking off as well and doing really well. So it was really almost badly timed, I felt. But yeah, I think it's really great just now, man. I'm loving everything that's being cast just now. There's so many. And that's one of the best things as well, is like a lot of like my friends and stuff here that watch a lot of other sports and like football and all that stuff's all on hold here. So it's like, obviously, like it's the best is the fact that these sports are still going on. So although these people are stuck in lockdown, it's like they still have this opportunity to still watch tons of esports, you know. So that's
what's your physical sport that you enjoy watching the most? What do you follow?
It's probably UFC just now. That's the only downside to that is I've got to stay up to like 5 a.m. here to watch it.
Right, because they're all in Vegas, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's on Fight Island just now, so that's pretty good. That's in Dubai.
They actually haven't been following that. Did they actually buy Fight Island? Are they actually doing that?
It's it was it last weekend was the first one. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy, man. Talk about too much money. So
I mean that's literally the plot of Mortal Kombat, right?
Yeah, it is.
All the fighters in Island, and I mean ridiculous. That's
what happens. You get so rich, you just live out your video game fantasies as a kid, and that's it.
Well, I guess that means I got to buy a farm and start watering some crops then for my Harvest Moon days.
You get to finish your full day with a drink.
Yes.
Your mom's not going to be there to slap out your hand. It's good.
Perfect.
So what about you? Do you actually keep up with like other esports, or what other like sports do you in the real world?
Yeah, good question. Let me answer your question by telling you a completely unrelated like 25-minute story, because that's what I do for a living. Are you familiar with Bartle's taxonomy of gamers?
No, I'm not.
So there's this researcher named Richard Bartle, and in 2006 he wrote a really interesting piece called I'm going to forget the name of it. It was something about virtual worlds, and like basically in the paper he outlined that for the most part gamers come to video games for 4 different kinds of experiences.
Okay.
And one of those 4 was competitors, and people who play video games so they can be better than other people, and that's the experience they seek. And I think for the most part in esports, that's the kind of person that's very obviously drawn to esports. The person who wants to be better than someone else, the people who wants to be number 1 on the leaderboard or have the most gold or whatever it is. And I am like 0% competitive. I grew up playing baseball as a kid, and if there's any sport that ever makes you want to blow your brains out and not be competitive ever again, it's playing American baseball. I still love watching baseball games because I like to drink beer and eat nachos, but that's it's about the only excuse to hang out with your mates. So I'm not competitive hardly at all, which is why I don't compete in StarCraft or anything. But some people come to the game to be to socialize, to build bonds with other people, and for the most part, that's why I play video games. So I don't follow a lot of competitive sports at all.
Okay.
I used to live in Boston, Massachusetts, and if you live in Boston, you're legally obligated to be a fan of the Boston Celtics, the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins, somebody else. Oh, the Red Sox, obviously. So I followed some traditional sports then, and I kind of keep up, but I couldn't tell you who's gonna win anything lately.
Okay.
And as far as esports go, I've been wanting to like dip my toe in the water of other esports, but since I'm so busy with StarCraft, like my calendar is so jammed, I don't have time to just sit down and
Actually do stuff.
invest in learning something new. And at this point, I mean, so like when I first started streaming full time in February, I did try to learn League of Legends a little bit,
Okay.
and I streamed it a couple times. And after about 3 weeks, I realized that this game, I mean, it has 10 years of, or however long it's been out now.
Yeah, it's
years
something
and
like
years of
season 10, I
history.
think. You think you're right, yeah.
The amount of data that I would have to ingest to be able to even speak intelligently about the game it would take a year of watching and reviewing and learning, and it'd be a huge investment. So I'm kind of looking for another game to start following. But right now I'm like
Just
99%
time.
on StarCraft 2. Yeah.
Well,
I play Civilization 6 to relax at this point because that's all I've got.
Well, I actually play less StarCraft because of that reason. I feel like if I need to play or I want to, I do enjoy still playing it, but it's not really a game you can just relax and play.
No.
And even MOBAs. When I'm playing them, they're not relaxing if you're wanting to really try hard. But I feel like your brain has to be 100% on every second when you're playing StarCraft. So I'd rather just watch someone and go, "Wow, that's really good." It's easier for that, you know. But yeah.
And if you're playing video games to relax, then I always feel like if I'm playing a video game and I don't have something else on my second monitor, like a YouTube video that I'm watching, then I'm just not relaxing. I'm working on whatever video game I'm working on, and there's obviously a joy to be found in the meaningful work of playing and mastering a video game. But I'm looking for a different kind of joy in the evenings after I've already shouted about StarCraft for 6 hours, and I just want to watch a YouTube video and make my Stardew Valley farm look a little bit more attractive or whatever.
I actually started playing Stardew Valley last week for the first time.
No way! For the first time?
Yeah.
Please tell me all about your Stardew Valley farm right now.
So like basically, I was actually hungover. I wanted to stream, but didn't want to play anything that was too mentally demanding. And when my friend said Stardew Valley was on sale, and I was like, he said it was like a multiplayer. I was like, all right, let's just play. Ended up playing it for like 8 hours. Just like it was so, talk about like rewards for getting like a little bit further. Like you hand in a quest and it's like, here's 300 gold, and you just spend days like chopping down trees, going to sleep, chopping down trees, going to sleep, and it was actually hilarious. Like we did like a dual stream with him, and oh my god, it was just like in the mines hitting slime for 8
Oh yeah. It's we talk about good game design. That game has the most satisfying cycle of play, which intrinsically motivates you to get better and better over time, rather than providing like external awards for the most part. Most of the rewards in Stardew Valley are internal, where it's just you set a goal for yourself, and the game allows you to accomplish it. It's beautifully done. That guy did so well with that game.
And it's one of those things as well. Like people join when they see you streaming it. It's like, why are you playing like a game from like like the late 80s? It's like, nah, man, it's like this is a new game. But I just got to the point where I built my coop. That's how far I am.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah, man.
Exciting stuff.
I get enough gratification for the game. I don't need other people tell me I'll do a good job.
It's good because it's well worth it. I'm sure 400 hours into that game.
Oh really? Wow.
Single player co-op, Switch, PC.
Everything.
I love it, man. It's great.
Oh, it's on Switch?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, see, now you told me that. That's even worse. I'm not gonna sleep now.
Sorry, mate. Sorry. It's one of those games I've gotten to the point where I've played it so much that I don't find that much joy in it anymore. Like I've experienced the entire spectrum of the game. It's like that and Breath of the Wild are two games where I've just sort of, because I just bought a Wii Pro controller because my Joy-Cons are all messed up yesterday. And I was going to test it out on Breath of the Wild, and I started playing through, and I got about 30 minutes in, and I was like, you know what? I think I've solved this video game. Like whatever joy it's had, I've extracted that, and it's 100% mined out at this point. But I'm that way with Stardew Valley as well, where it's so great, but I think I'm finally over it.
It's definitely like a one you can switch your brain off to. But so what other games you mentioned another one earlier that you sort of turn your brain off to?
Civilization. Yeah.
Oh, Civilization. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, what's the latest one of that actually? Because again, I used to remember the old Civilizations. I used to play them, but I haven't played any of the new ones.
Oh, we're up on it's 6 now. And I've never been like a hardcore Civilization guy, but I've been a hardcore board game guy for a long time. And Civilization is like the ultimate, I think that even the tagline for the game is like the ultimate digital board game or something. Just because it's all about understanding these systems and maximizing your worker placements basically every single turn. It's fascinating. It was on sale on the Steam sale for like half price, which is still $60 for all the expansions and everything. A couple months, last month, 2 months ago. So I picked it up and I've been really getting into it. It's super fun, and you can be as serious as you want to with it if you play on. Because I'm playing on like the medium difficulties right now.
Okay.
And if you really want to squeak out, the extra, if you want to do the maths in your head and like every day, okay, if I make this move, I'll be at +6 this, but +4 this. But if I make this move, I'll be at +6 +5. So I'm going to make that move, which will allow me 10 turns later to do this. And if you want to do that, you absolutely can. But if you just want to fire it up and be like, all right, I'm going to play as Germany. I'm going to take over the world.
Just sit back in your chair and just,
you can do that as well. So it's fun. And it's a fun one to stream as well, because everybody that comes on is much better than I am at Civilization. So I get a lot of support from chat about like all the things I'm doing wrong.
That's how I feel like in every single game. I can definitely relate, man. Just, you're better than me and you've been playing half the time? All right, cool. Very much, man. But I'd love to see how much Steam make on their like even the humble bundles and things like that. Like if anything's been on sale during lockdown, my friends are like, let's just get this game. And even if you play it for like a week, it seems worth it because it's like £6,
Oh yeah.
It's good.
Absolutely. The other one I just got was, have you heard of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes?
No, might give this.
If you've got a mate that you want to play a great game with, it's like $4 or something. Phenomenal. You may have seen, I don't know, memes of it or something, but basically,
I have seen actually.
Yeah,
I've seen
so
pictures
one of you
of
can
this.
see one of you can see a bomb, and the other one of you has the bomb defusal manual, but they can't see the bomb, and you can't see the manual. So you got to like hop on a Discord call and just chat with them. And it, you're on a timer and you're trying to tell them which wires to cut and which sequences to press in and stuff. And it was on sale last couple weeks ago for like $4. So I bought it, and one of my friends and I played it, and we played it for about 2 hours the first time. And it was super fun. And then we tried to come back and play it some more after she'd had a glass of wine. I don't recommend that.
No,
don't drink and play Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, because you'll get real frustrated real fast.
Just real annoyed. Yeah. That's good. That's definitely one I'm going to stick on the list there, man.
That's fun.
So what about streamers? Do you ever watch any other streamers and stuff, like for entertainment, or even for like, again, maybe someone that's a caster or something?
Yeah. I probably split my time between streams about 50-50. That's not true. 70-30 or so. Usually I'll be watching other StarCraft streamers. Because I'm always trying to get better at casting. So watching other casters and what they do is super useful. I find that when I don't watch other casters for a long time, I sort of fall into a routine of saying the same things over and over again. And I will physically cringe when I cast if I'm like, and the banelings, and I'll use like the same word to describe it every time. The banelings smash into the wall, and then 3 games later I'll say, oh, and the banelings smash into this unit, and the banelings smash into that unit. And like if I don't watch someone else and listen to the way they explain something, then I'll find that I'll fall into my own patterns really quickly, and that gets really annoying for viewers. So about 70% of the time I'll try and watch other StarCraft, usually casters and commentators. It's weird. I don't really like watching StarCraft players a lot, unless they commentate their own games and talk about what they're doing. But for the most part, competitive game. I mean, if you've ever watched a competitive StarCraft stream, you know that this is exactly what you hear.
Well, that's it, yeah.
For 20 minutes, and I can't do it. But if I watch other casters talk about the game, that's really exciting. And then the other 30% might. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just the way to say it's the same. Like you see a lot of casters that are. I prefer people that like will explain the gameplay. I used to quite like watching like Grubby and things like that. Whenever they played, they would explain everything. Whereas you get the top players who they say so little, they're just which is cool to watch. Don't get me wrong. I think sometimes it's amazing to see them do that. Yeah. But in my head, I'm like, I just get annoyed that I don't know how we did that. Like, can you explain how? And
you talked about it earlier. It's that 100% of your brain thing. If you're dedicating 5 or 10% of your brain to explaining what you're doing, your play is 5 or 10% worse than it should be, and other players just can't. The top players can't take that time out to explain what they're doing and talk through their decisions. And then the other 30% of streams that I watch is my guilty pleasure, and I don't know if I've ever shared this on stream or anything, but speed runs.
Oh, speed runs. Okay, cool.
Are my jam. I freaking love speed runs, man.
Does it matter what game, or is it just any speed run?
there are a couple games I really love, and then for the most part, I'll watch just about anything. Obviously, with any speed, I feel like the only speed runs that are really great are if you've played the game before.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I was never a PlayStation guy, for example. So any of these old PlayStation games that people are going through and speedrunning, I can appreciate that they're really cool. But I also never had any experience. I don't know how hard it is to do that trick myself anyway.
Yeah.
So when they pull off some crazy wall jump, clip, glitch thing, and they're like, whoa, I don't have any comparison as to how hard that is. Whereas if they're doing, Super Mario 64, we all know how freaking clumsy the camera and controllers and stuff are. So it's really impressive. And again, I'm not competitive at all. So those guys who literally their entire life, 40, 60 hours a week, grinding out for 1 second to beat the record by 1 second. I'm fascinated by that. It's so cool. So I love that. I love. I got hooked into AGDQ from an early age, and I try and catch that whenever I can.
Yeah. It was
Zelda
I used to quite like watching, actually. It was again, it was more the fact I played it when I was younger. So when you actually just saw somebody take way less than half the time than you did, you're just like, oh wait, I could have done that. Like when I was a kid, like you just, I don't know, you start to relate to it a bit better, I think.
Oh yeah. I actually just finished watching. There's a really cool. Was it last AGDQ or the one before? They did a one of those relay races where they had like 9 streamers on 3 teams and they played 3 different Zelda games in a row.
Oh,
so they do like Zelda 1 and then the second Zelda and then whatever.
All right, so the second person can't start until the first one's been finished. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So it's like teams of 3, and the first person. So they start, and all 3 streamers are playing the original Zelda, and then once they finish, the team rotates. Like the second person steps in and starts working on the second Zelda, and then it's just like a relay race where they pass the baton to the next guy. I just finished watching that whole. It's like it's like a 2.5 hour event, but I was tuned in because I was like, this is so cool.
Oh, that's really cool. I'll need to check that out as well. That sounds like something I'd watch.
I know they did with Zelda, and they did it with some of the old Marios as well. All the 2D side-scrolling Marios, where they had I think teams of 4 going through them. It was fascinating.
Like, see, just now I'm really into watching like talking about, you were saying baseball before. I'm waiting for a gaming one to come out as well, because like I've never really watched many like American sports. Whenever I've visited the States, I've gone and watched like live sports just because it's what to do.
You should.
But the like again the Michael Jordan documentary. I started watching like Last Chance U, like things like that. So it's like American football, and I don't know, I've never really watched them much online or preferred like just to sit and watch them. But the way they like capture it and explain it and put a proper story of emphasis on it, it's so captivating. I'm just waiting for like them to do the same with like a gaming one. Or you mentioned baseball, like that's something that like I've never really watched. I haven't even seen a live baseball game before. I've only ever seen it like on TV. That's it. So like to actually like have them explain it, have the teams like they talk about it in the dugout and things like that. I think you'd be captured, and I think that's what's needed. Is a gaming one as well.
If you want to get into baseball, I'll give you one recommendation. And look, I'm an American, and America has a lot of problems, but baseball is one of our greatest cultural exports, for better or for worse. It's a garbage game. Like from a game design standpoint, baseball is terrible. It's watching it on TV is like watching golf on TV. I will never understand why somebody would choose to watch this terrible sport on TV. But if you're ever interested in baseball, there's a fantastic movie with Brad Pitt called Moneyball.
Oh, Moneyball, yeah. It was on Netflix as well, actually. I've seen it advertised.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to check it out, because it sort of shows that baseball has changed from really being about the game that happens on the field to being about the game that happens off the field, where they're choosing players and like just crunching statistics from hundreds of years of baseball to figure out which players are actually valuable and like who's going to be more useful in certain. It's fascinating, and Moneyball's a really well made. It's like an Aaron Sorkin. I think he redid the script for it, but it's got Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill.
Oh, Jonah Hill's in it.
It's the very serious Jonah Hill too, and he actually pulls it off. But it's the only way that I think a foreigner can properly appreciate baseball, because it helps you to understand like, okay, so what's going on the field is kind of important, but really what these people care about is these players and their histories and their statistics. And it's a fascinating movie. So as someone with like an economics nerdy kind of math background, I loved it.
It's good watch.
It was really cool. Highly recommend.
Well, it's like
don't watch baseball on TV.
That's all I'd seen. I think I was actually in the States when I watched it as well. I was just like, I'll watch a game of baseball, and but it was just the seasons when I go over there. It was either like ice hockey. Man, loved watching ice hockey as well.
Oh yeah.
I go to see them live was incredible. But the issue with American football and me being young as well, I didn't really understand it. So I'd have never really learned the rules. And then over here, the only time people really watch it is the Super Bowl, and that's it.
Right.
You know, if it's on, people watch. But yeah, so watching that Last Chance U, I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's like they take like troubled or kids that have had like criminal backgrounds or just failed to meet their Division 1, and they try to push them back into like professional leagues.
Okay.
And then it'll break down good plays, and again, it's all these exciting bits of the game. So there's no like breaks in between, and I'm just sitting there like, this is amazing. I now understand how to play this game. You know, so
Sure.
I feel like if they explained like why games, because again, like you must understand this as well, maybe from your parents' point of view of like games, is like when you're trying to explain to somebody why you like to watch somebody play a game. Like my parents or that generation are sort of like, you want to watch somebody play a game. And it's like they don't really. I'm like, and I always compare it to like Ronaldo the footballer. I'm like, him doing what he's doing is literally like Ronaldo in football. Like he's just playing a computer. You do that all the time. You can just go and do that. I'm like, no, you don't get it. You know.
Yeah.
So I think if it was explained on Netflix, the older generation might get it. But you know.
That'd be good, yeah, because I had to have that conversation with my family several times, and it was always, yes, think about it, you watch professional sports, people who are much better at you, like you could go out to your front yard and throw a football around and no one would watch you. I feel like, how do you not understand that there are like people doing this at a much higher level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about your parents now? Do they sort of support the fact that you're just like, I'm just rocking being a caster. I'm loving this.
I don't know. I'm in my early 30s now, and I don't talk to my mom anymore. But my dad still lives pretty close by, and actually I went to see him this weekend. Okay. And he and my brother are like, my dad was a farmer growing up.
Okay.
So he's about as far removed from video games as is physically possible. And my brother sold crop insurance for a long time, and now he's like doing seed sellers. I don't know. So they're like in a completely different world. So they have no understanding of what I'm doing. But I will give huge credit to my brother, who I don't see him very often. He's got 2 kids now, and they, for some reason, take up most of his time. I don't understand. But my brother was like, asked me really intelligent questions this weekend about how my sponsors work and what is advertising and how do I organize matches and how does that all happen. So he was actually like trying to understand a little bit, but my dad, I think, has given up. He's just like, you do something with computers, and that's, you can fix my computer, and that's all I really care about.
It. Just use that, just in the IT support bracket for life now.
It's all the same. It's all the same. So I'm 31. My dad won't support me until I pop out a grandkid for him, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. So
that's funny. So what about like I know you stream, but most of the time when you stream StarCraft, are you casting stuff, or are you like playing like StarCraft?
No, I cast. I don't play hardly at all. I think I'm one of the only people who has that unique blend of 100% casting.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'll hear a lot of people, and I'll see it like every now and then on Reddit, somebody will pop in and be like, "Oh, I'm thinking of casting StarCraft. What do I need to do to prepare for it?" Mm-hmm. And the top answer almost always is, "Oh, get really good at the game. You got to get really good at the game first. Get to GM. Just play. And I usually try and respond and say, hey, politely, I'm going to disagree with you there. Sure, in traditional sports, usually they have ex-players commentating. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about British sports as well, but in American sports, we have a few really famous commentators who have never played the sport a day in their life.
So I'm like, you have one person who's like, would almost be like yourself. They've got like an artsy, or it's like a well-spoken background who they're presenting. They're basically just an actor, yeah. And then you've got somebody who is unbelievable, was a professional at the sport, and they break it down better, almost, Yeah.
Color guy, analysis guy.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
That's a much better way to describe it. Yeah.
There's a reason it's a famous duo. Is that you have a color guy and an analysis guy because, the range of people that watch sports is so broad, and even for esports. And just like we've been talking, some people will come to the sports and they want somebody to tell them, okay, the reason he did this at 14 minutes and 36 seconds is so that at 17 minutes and 28 seconds, he can build this specific unit that'll put him in this position to do this maneuver that was famous in 2012, but he's brought it back in his practices. And like some people live for that and they come to the cast for that. And then some people like me just want to have, something else up there. They're playing Civilization on their main monitor, right? They've got the StarCraft game on their second monitor, and they just want to be able to look over when something exciting is happening and somebody's shouting about it. So I don't play at all. Well, hardly at all. I play very occasionally. just to make sure I understand, all if any new mechanics are added or anything.
Yeah, okay.
But my hand-eye coordination is terrible. My brain does not work very well at all. Like everything you need to be a good StarCraft commentator or a good StarCraft player, I have none of that. So I try and play when I can, but for the most part, if I have time for StarCraft, I'm going to be commentating.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you stream like your chill games? Like, would you play like stream like Stardew Valley, or is that like an offline thing you just do to like unwind?
Yeah, I mostly do this offline. I'm hoping to start streaming them soon, but right now I'm pushing for Twitch partner. I'm still not partnered. I've been trying for months and months now, but I've had a frustrating run of denials for various odd reasons. But I'm worried right now if I stream like Stardew Valley and nobody tunes in,
People hurt it.
It'll hurt my chances of getting to Twitch partners. So I gotta like be.
You have to have like a consistent number, don't you? Is like you have to have like 75 consistent viewers, concurrent viewers, something
exactly.
like that, isn't it? Yeah.
The average 75 viewers, and so like last month when I applied, I was like well over 200 average viewers. But they said that's a lot of more watching from embedded streams like TL.net and stuff.
Right. Okay, that doesn't count. Right.
Even if you took those out, I would still would have met the requirement. It's really frustrating.
Wow, I didn't realize they were that strict.
Yeah, they have they have like the original requirements for being a streamer, which are I think you have to stream 12 days out of 25.
Yeah.
50 hours or something, and then average of 75 viewers, which is the hardest one. And I blew through all those, but then they always remind you at every step of the process. They're like, by the way, even if you qualify, we still have the final say
we can say
on
no.
if you're a streamer or not. So anyway, so I don't stream those right now. I'm hoping I will eventually because that would allow me to fill out my schedule a bit.
So it's partner
so right
and
now,
Stardew Valley streams. Got it.
That's right. That's the goal. That's the goal. I'm playing the long game here. I'm just doing the StarCraft so that I can eventually stream Stardew Valley.
Cool. So is that the future plan? Is just to keep for yourself, just to keep streaming out StarCraft and just keep hitting the major tournaments?
Yeah, for now. Of course, major tournaments are tough because there's only a few in StarCraft 2. We got I think 3 like premier tournaments a year that are guaranteed, and then a couple more that pop up every now and then. So in the weeks where they're not premier tournaments for a B stream, I'm doing my own tournaments. Actually, it's funny. There's a site called Liquipedia, which is like the StarCraft Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And I didn't qualify for a Liquipedia page as a StarCraft commentator. Initially, I qualified for a Liquipedia page as a StarCraft tournament organizer because I have to organize all my own content in between all the major streams. So for the most part, I'm like organizing my own little tournaments and trying to find sponsors for $100 events or $1,000 events or something to sort of fill the time every week and make sure that these players have a way to keep earning money outside of these big events as well.
Oh, that's really cool. And do you actually just stream these tournaments on your stream, or is there like a proper central location for it? Or
yeah, most of the time they're on my stream if I'm organizing them. I do some contract work on occasion where like if a big StarCraft team is having some big event, they'll say, hey, we're going to stream this on our channel. Will you organize it and cast it and everything? But we want it streamed on our channel for our internal metrics or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But for the most part, yeah, if I organize something, it'll be on my channel and I just sort of cast them from there.
And so like you mentioned earlier, we're talking about coronavirus and stuff. So how's that sort of affected like your day-to-day life and stuff? I know like for some nerds like me, it hasn't really affected me too much apart from seeing family. I'm just staying inside a little bit more. But how's it affected you?
Yeah, it's been it hasn't been that different, to be honest. The biggest changes that I've moved it hadn't affected me at all until a couple months ago. My internet at my house had been really bad. I was paying for this premium internet connection, and I just kept getting drops and like these weird service interruptions and stuff, which for the usual internet user they wouldn't care. But since I'm streaming, I can't afford to have my internet drop out randomly every couple hours. So I finally, after months and months of trying to figure out what was going on with my ISP, they figured out that apparently the problem is somewhere like in the walls of my apartment, where they need to run new wires or something. And with the coronavirus, they can't come into people's apartments.
Yeah.
So basically, we can't fix it. Period. So I sort of freaked out because I was like, oh man, this is my livelihood. This is what am I going to do? Luckily, I found a shared office space here in town. It's pretty near me, so I moved all my equipment into the shared office space. And aside from one scare where our office manager here was exposed to coronavirus, she didn't have it. We're all fine, thank goodness. But one scare there, really the only difference for me has been that I've had to drive to work anytime I want to work now. So I can't just you look like you're very cozy in your room and everything.
Yeah, I haven't really left here in a while. So.
Yeah. So I do a lot of events, obviously, that are evening in Korea, which is very early morning for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been used to like waking up at 3:30 a.m., 4:30 a.m. to do these super early events, which just means that now I wake up at 3:30 a.m. and drive 10 minutes to get to the office and clock in instead of,
Rolling out
pulling
of
up my
bed.
pajama, pulling up my pajama pants and like booting up my PC. That's really the only difference so far. It hasn't. I'm so fortunate that I have, a career that it hasn't changed anything for me right now.
Is your state quite bad, or is it? Because again, I know US in general, some places are really bad and some places are not too bad and stuff. So what about like your
Uh,
area?
yeah. So my area, I'm in Wichita, Kansas, which has a population of about 500,000 or so.
Okay.
Uh, and we until May, June, I know we were fairly good actually, just a couple hundred cases, which was really nice. And then June, July, August, things are going to get way worse. Already our numbers are spiking really high because the U.S. is the land of the free and home of the idiots. So we got some trouble coming up, but for the most part, it's pretty good. We got masks to be worn and everything, but we haven't had a lockdown. We haven't had anything serious happening yet. I was looking for my new. I just moved into a new apartment in February, just at the sort of the beginning of everybody like, is this going to happen? And I was looking at my apartment, and the person who's showing me my apartment was like, "Oh, you're lucky you moved to Kansas because Kansas is pretty much in quarantine all the time anyway, because nobody wants to come here, and everybody that's here doesn't want to leave. So for the most part, it's been pretty good. I have a friend in New York City, and she's just been going out of her mind because like straight up not leaving her apartment for weeks at a time, ordering food in, getting groceries delivered. She and her roommates are literally the only humans she's seen in a long time, and she's just scared for her life all the time. And I'm fortunate to not be in quite as dangerous a position.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a bit intense. It's the same as here. It's like, well, it's starting to like loosen off a bit now, but it's the same. The only thing I've really experienced is my internet has been spiking badly. I think it's just due to like more people sitting at home watching like Netflix and stuff. So but it's weird because like it's funny you saying that your ISP is like blaming like it's your walls. Like there's like a meme over here that like they blame everything that possibly could be, which like I'm physically looking at it's you, and they'll be like, "Are you sure? We'll send you a new router." It's like I know it's not a router. Like I'm getting it, and you're just I'm hardwired in. I know, and oh no, but are you sure? Like I mean, and you're just taking all these things off the box. And you're like, it's you. You need to sort it. And they're like, no, everything's fine. And then you'll just go past like their the company's like box, and there's like 4 vans trying to figure out what's going on, and they're just everything's fine. Don't worry about it. It's like so
you're from the UK. You can appreciate crippling politeness because we have that in Kansas as well. That's one of the few reasons when I lived in the UK. That's one of the few reasons I fit in there was that I also suffer from crippling politeness all the time. And I got to the point where after a couple calls to my ISP, because I mean I was streaming, I had like a constant ping test running, and so I could see every time a ping like was denied, like didn't go through, and so I knew it's not me. And so I got to the point where I would call them and they'd say, oh, this is so can I help you? And I said, hey, can you please just send me to tier 2 tech support? Like I know you can't help me, and I don't want to be rude, but I don't want to waste your time. Please just send me to the next level because I need to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
That's pretty much the same as here, but now it's like they just keep saying it's like because it's like the contracts over here are like again into too much detail. It's like if you're down consistently for like 3 days, then you can break your contract. So if you're like if it spikes, technically they're not breaking their contract. So they're like so if it goes down for 1 or 2 days, they'll be like, oh no, it should be back up by the 3rd day. Boom, it's always 100% fixed. Yeah, because it's like as soon as you can lose the money, it's back up. But it's a little bit of monopoly here. It's like one big company almost runs the whole UK's phone lines, so it's not
right.
So you can't really go anywhere else.
Oh yeah. When I first moved to the UK, I lived in a hamlet in southern UK. It was real garbage internet, and I felt bad. But yeah, it was all in the same network, so I just had one number to call, which was nice.
Well, like here it's like it's not too bad. I think the most you can really get in our area is like 70 meg. But I remember like must have been like 7 or 8 years ago when we went to DreamHack. It was ages ago. And I remember like here the fastest you can get was 20, and that was like really fast. And then went to what the hell's it called in Sweden? Norrköping? Is that what it's called? Norrköping? Can't remember how you pronounce it. Where DreamHack was, and the bus that took you there, they had 50 meg on their bus, and I was just like, what? I was like, this bus has got faster internet than my house. This is crazy. But yeah, okay. That was soul destroying. But yeah.
It's like when I was in Korea and they had gigabit internet for $30 a month. It's just a thousand up, a thousand down for peanuts.
Yeah, just stacking up every download. You're watching something, downloading stuff, streaming something. It's fine.
Unreal.
No. So talking about like health and wellness and Corona and stuff.
Yeah.
So how what do you do to sort of like keep fit? I did mention, at the start that we do fitness stuff here. So yeah, like nutrition and exercise wise, what do you sort of do to keep fit?
I'm going to be the poster child for like what not to do during coronavirus. So I have very little discipline in my physical routine. I'm not great unless I have the best shape I've ever been in my life was when I had a 9 to 5 job. So that 5 o'clock, I went to the gym across the street and lifted pretty heavy for about an hour, ran a mile, and then was done. And that was like, it was great because I could slot it into my routine every time.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I got the double whammy of one, having a job with stupid hours. Sometimes I'll have a 3:30 in the morning event and then an 11 o'clock at night event. And then, maybe some time in between or maybe not, depending on if I'm at the office or at home or whatever. So that's been killing it. Usually, historically, to stay in shape, I've been doing yoga. Yoga is my jam, and I love it. When I was in Korea, I went to a studio near my house every single day, 7 days a week, at exactly the same time. And it was great because I turned into a machine, and I was like, this is just what I'm doing. But since recently, I haven't been, since one, there are no yoga studios open because that would be completely irresponsible.
Yeah, probably.
And two, my schedule's been really terrible. I've been doing nothing. And it's been showing. I've actually put on probably 15 pounds in the last, 6 months or so. It's been awful. I've been eating poorly. I haven't been exercising. And I feel like garbage about it. But until I can figure out a better way to slot things into my crazy schedule, I feel like it's only going to get worse. And I'm a little worried for myself.
It's sort of like getting into like a routine, and it's so difficult to get into a routine just now, I feel. But yeah, I feel like most people have either gone one way or the other. They've either gone, well, I've got loads of time in my hands because I'm not working, and then I've gotten really fit, or they're still super busy, but they're working from home, and they've gotten even bigger because all they're doing is just ordering food all the time or whatever, But so normally when in junior, like your routine, if you're, not stuck in the house and stuff or stuck in the office.
So back when I was in shape, it was, I do yoga 7 days a week, and that was an hour-long class. And the class I usually do, it depends, every studio is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do not hot yoga. I usually just do like a normal yoga class.
Okay.
And they'd mix it up with some strength yoga, some basic sun salutations and stuff.
What's hot yoga? You got me curious.
Oh, you ever done hot yoga?
I've never heard that before.
I did go to a really interesting. So hot yoga has been a trend in the States for half a decade, maybe more.
Okay.
Where it's basically you get into a room and they crank the heat up to 90, 100 Fahrenheit, so 30, 35 something centigrade.
Okay.
And just get it super hot, and they'll pump in a bunch of humidity as well. And then you'll go through. It depends on what kind of studio you go to, because there are a bunch of different kinds of yoga.
Okay.
A bunch of different flows that you can do. But they'll whatever flow you're doing, you just do it in a super hot studio with really high humidity. And the idea is that during your yoga, you sweat out.
You're just working harder, yeah.
Yeah, just working real hard to sweat everything out. And it's tough. It's not great for me because I am like the least attractive human ever, and I'm all like hairy and pale, and when I sweat, man. But like even when I'm in shape, and so when I did hot yoga, it was the usual bunch of yoga bunny fit ladies in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and then me, just this like sweating, heaving, breathing hard, smelly dude sitting in the middle of them. It was not a good look for me.
It's definitely a thing here as well. Like, there's a lot of like when the gyms are open, you get a lot of guys and girls that will wear like super expensive like Gymshark stuff, like again proper trendy looking stuff. And I've gotten into a thing of like buying like really nerdy gym apparel that's like I've got like a Goku shirt and stuff like that.
Nice.
And they're just like comic book shirts, man. So it's just like I don't know who folk are impressing in the gym. Like, just go and sweat out and go home, man. But you get like, either some dude wearing some super tight gym shirt that's really expensive, or some girl that's got a full face of makeup on in the gym. It's like, man, just go and work out and go home, man. Like, yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I grew up not working out at all. I played baseball. I did sports in high school, but my parents never like taught me to work out. I never had I was never seriously competitive, so I never had anybody taught me how to use the gym or anything until my second job out of college. I was in the next cubicle over from me was a guy who had played baseball in college competitively, and he was one of those guys who's like his biceps were the size of like my waist. He was freaking enormous.
It's massive.
Yeah. And so one day, and I probably weighed like 135 pounds, 5'8", 135, like 0% muscle mass, just nothing. So one day I peeked over the top of my cubicle and I was like, "Hey, Ian, would you teach me how to use the gym? Like, can I come with you at some point?" And he was the nicest dude. So he and I worked out together for the first like 2 years that I ever started working out, and he showed me how to properly like, okay, we generally did just like muscle confusion, so we do 2 muscle groups a day. Swapping between the groups. So
okay,
today was biceps and abs. Tomorrow was shoulders and tris. The next day was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so he just taught me how to use every single machine in the gym, how to lift properly, how to support myself. And I got a really good like basic understanding just because I was luckily able to stumble across a mentor who was able to teach me that kind of stuff. So now when I do go back, when I am working out properly in the gym, I'll do usually I'll try and do like yoga 3 or 4 days a week. And then the days that I don't have yoga, I try and lift in the gym.
That's really good.
And as long as I can avoid running, I'm really happy.
I can 100% agree with you on that. Like even during coronavirus, like I'll go for walks rather than running. I play football and do all that. I'm doing like a competitive sport. I'm the complete opposite with you. Like I'm really competitive. So if I play like squash or football, like I almost forget I'm running because I'm so competitive. But to just go out and run, like there's no podcast in the world that can keep me entertained for jogging for like 5K. It just doesn't. You get friends that'll go like, I'll go on my Fitbit and I've beat my old time by like 30 seconds. I'm just like, what? Nah, it's too boring for me.
Well, I remember I listened to you must know the Joe Rogan podcast, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He always has interesting folks on. He had a guy on one time who was like a competitive bow hunter.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that actually. Yeah.
He's done it a couple times, I think. He's like a very extreme human being, and they were talking about what they do for fitness. And he had just done a 100-mile race, which just sounds to me like when I die and inevitably go to hell, I feel like that's what it's going to be.
That's the starting line, the
100-mile race. And he was telling this story about how his son dropped out at 90 miles, and he was like, "Well, they don't give a medal for 90 miles out of 100." Ah, jeez. But the guy was talking about how much he loved running and how his discipline stems from his running. Mm-hmm. And he was like, if you can run 100 miles, you can force your brain to do anything else. Because there's no joy in running. Mm-hmm. It's just like there's no intrinsic joy in running. It's just the joy is at the end once you've done it and you're like, okay, it's over. And so that's sort of how he saw the discipline in his running. And I immediately felt really bad because I hate running so much, even like a mile. Yeah. Just end it. It's awful.
Yeah, it's weird. The guy, what's his name? I think his name is Jacko. It's Jacko something. He's also been on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's like a ex-military guy. I think he's been on a few times. And he's the same. He's like, he talks about how he hates running. He hates going to the gym sometimes, but like you'll get up at 4 a.m. every day on the button. And he's just like, but if you do all those things you hate all the time, the other things seem better than they are, sort of thing. And like, never really thought that, like to do something that you dislike that much. I don't know. Maybe I just got the wrong mindset.
It's interesting. Yeah. Every human is very different, and that's what makes humans so interesting. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's worth it.
So what about your go-to cheat meal? If you're gonna have something that's just absolute filth, what do you have?
Oh, I stuffed crust Pizza Hut pizza. That's usually my go-to, just garbage. Yeah. Well, I really love to cook, so I have to be careful because I like to cook for other people as well, and I try and outdo them as often as I can. So if I'm cooking my own meal, oh gosh.
If you cook for others as well, do you not feel like you cook way too much for yourself? I always try to do that, man.
Exactly. You know what? I have a great answer for this, and it's definitely my weakness. It's not really a meal, but I love doing cheese boards. Cheese and charcuterie boards are my shit. For my birthday, I did a huge I did a triple charcuterie board all the way across the table and a wine tasting. But if I'm entertaining, if I have guests over, cheese board is my thing. And then of course there's always cheese left over, and that's my worst cheat, because during the I feel like when I'm eating with other people it's okay, because I'm sacrificing my health a little bit to build up my relationship health with these other humans.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm balancing out what I'm doing here. But then if I'm by myself and there's 3 blocks of leftover cheese in the fridge, that's got to be the worst for me, because I'll just throw them on a board. I'll make a little mini cheese board for myself and just read a book and just shovel it in. I'm awful.
Jesus ace, but I'm so weird. Is I'll honestly, like, I absolutely love cheese, but it's like the basic of cheeses. I like cheddar, mozzarella, like, all these like blue cheeses and stuff. I'm not really a fan of, but I could sit and
Nothing wrong
just
with
have
that.
like the basic cheap cheese. Like someone just give me a block and I can just eat it. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
simple mind.
Definitely. Definitely.
But it's weird as well. Like talking about like fitness and nutrition and like esports as well. There was like a Reddit post a while ago I was chatting to someone else about, and it was how like I can't remember what gaming team it was in Korea, but it was a StarCraft team, and basically all the players on the team had to like abide to like I don't know if it was set diet, but it was definitely like had to do X amount of exercise like per day and things like that, and
Hmm.
try to tell like people that like some of my friends they have like a strict routine diet. They're just gamers, man, and it's like nah, but like otherwise they will just sit at their computer for 14 hours playing this game or practicing, watching film or whatever.
Well,
Um, yeah.
that was a really interesting argument. I remember in the StarCraft community specifically back in 2013, 2014, a while ago, where there was one American house, the Evil Geniuses
Hmm.
team house, and that was the guys like In Control and Idra and Huck and
Who
like
would
those
go to
days
the
of
gym
StarCraft.
all the time.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
So at the American EG house, they were training like a sports team, and they would like watch film together, and they would exercise together, and they would eat together, and they were like trying to be holistic like human beings. And that was compared to the other big team house at the time was the Jin Air Green Wings
Yeah.
team house, and it was all the Korean players who just played StarCraft 10 hours a day, and that's it. And they ate cup noodles and just lived their
Just ate a
lives.
ramen, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was this big at the time. It was this big argument about do e-gamers need to keep up with an exercise and diet routine, or
Hmm.
is that a waste of their time? And at the time, the Koreans kept just blowing the
Yeah,
Americans out of
destroying
the
them. Yeah.
water. So the argument was clearly it doesn't matter what you do.
Hmm.
But I feel like at the time, I think it was just the function of Koreans just being so far ahead of everyone else
Yeah.
competitively. But now, if you follow the StarCraft scene, the EU and Korean scene, especially EU and Korean scenes, are like sort of coming together a little bit. The top two ranked players in the world right now are both foreigners,
Yeah.
both non-Koreans, and I mean, look at a photo of Serral, the number one player.
Hmm.
Look at a photo of his forearms. That kid plays golf so much. Anytime he like does one of these, his forearms are all veiny
Yeah.
and ripped.
Like bigger than his biceps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a famous photo of Hero Marine, a German Terran player,
Hmm.
doing like this after a win from the side, and he's just got like this very vascular forearm move where clearly he's hitting the gym and looks really strong. So I think there's a better argument to be made now for holistically sort of taking care of yourself, especially
Hmm.
if you're in a profession where you're forced to be inactive for long periods of time.
So what do you think? Actually, there was a good like sort of segue there of like especially European players and Koreans, because I think that was another thing that a lot of people were almost turned off by, was the fact that the Koreans were so far ahead. Like I just couldn't. I can't express how happy I was when Serral actually managed to do the impossible, and take away a world. But yeah, it was just insane. And now that they're almost, for me, it's more exciting because anything can happen. That makes it so much more. It's like the Koreans want to get the title back. Like it just turns into this huge, markable thing that's more watchable, I guess is the best way to put it. But what do you think sort of brought it back to like them being on an even playing field almost?
Oh man, that's a great question, and there's so much going on. If I can just step back for a minute and recap
Hmm.
what's happening right now in StarCraft. Uh, Not only are all the events online, which means it's not just the richest players with the best teams who can afford to fly wherever to play.
Hmm.
Um, there's more than one top European player right now, because for years and years it was Serral and all the Koreans.
Yeah.
For the last 3 years, it's been Serral, all the Koreans. And now we see more and more European pros like slipping in. The top two players right now are Serral and Rayner, who
Yeah.
are both foreigners. Clem is a top 10 player. Anyway, if you look at the list, it's like Serral, Rayner, a couple Koreans, and then from there on out, it's about a 50-50 split of Koreans and
Make sure.
Europeans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been a number of things. Let's see. I think probably first and foremost, it would be short-sighted to not admit that a lot of Korean esports talent right now is not going into StarCraft.
Hmm.
I think that's probably one of the biggest factors, is that in Europe, there's still a good market for StarCraft 2 players, and you still see some young players coming up playing StarCraft in Europe. But in Korea, there are very few young Korean players who are looking to like get into StarCraft.
Yeah.
If they do go to esports, they do League of Legends or whatever. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The split between Brood War and StarCraft 2 is still going on. So, and let's see. Secondly, they think that StarCraft is an old person's game. Like I taught school in Korea for 1 year, and they were like, cool. "Oh, what sport do you watch?" And I said, "Oh, I watch StarCraft." And they're like, "You're an old man. That's good for old men." Come on, I'm 29 at the time. And anyway, so this is sport for old people. And then third, of course, Korean military service is a huge.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This big elephant in the room that you can't ignore. And all these big Koreans have maybe 10 years of a career before they're forced out for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have yet to see any Koreans coming back from their military service and competing at the highest levels of play.
Mm-hmm. They like to push it back, aren't they? They can like delay it for a set amount of years.
Yeah, and that's what they're all doing right now, is because I think they all see these guys going off to military and then coming back and trying to play StarCraft competitively and failing miserably.
They can't keep up.
So what they're doing is they can delay for 2 years.
Okay.
So you're supposed to serve when you're 26. You can you have to serve by the time you're 26. You can delay it for up to 2 years until you're 28. And then once you're 28, you have to go no matter what. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're about to win the GSL. You got to go, man. So that's something else that I think the young Korean players are thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to have an esports career, I've got a very limited window of time to do it. Which career can I make the most money in? And the answer is not ever going to be StarCraft.
Yeah.
That's tough. So that's one big reason we see more competitive EU players in the scene. I'm not really sure if anybody knows any of the other reasons. I don't know what in Europe is driving young players to StarCraft because I'm not around there. But
I was really shocked with
younger kids.
Yeah, well, like Raynor especially was one that like it felt like he came out of nowhere, and he was just this really young kid who was unbelievable at the game. And I remember like his some of his earlier games, and I was just like, how old is this guy? And then I was like, I don't know, it's great to see obviously young people coming into StarCraft, but yeah, it would be good to know just like, you know, what's actually driving you to play this game over others. Is it just the fact that you're that good at it, or yeah, you know, just curious.
Yeah, and it's you know, you say Raynor, and it's not just Raynor though. If anybody's listening to the podcast that's not familiar with StarCraft, right now we have got probably 5 or 6 players under the age of 20 who are just insanely talented.
Shit hot, yeah.
Famously, Max Pax right now is this 16-year-old kid, 15-year-old kid.
Is he 15?
He's not allowed to compete in some of the EU tournaments because they have the EU rules about gambling that you have to be 16 to like participate in online gaming events or whatever. So he's like not allowed to compete in some of these cups because he's too young, and that's like the only thing holding him back right now from really, really going crazy. So
that's the same as League of Legends, I think, as well.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
I think it's like you have to be 17, I think. So there was like a couple players who knew it, like you say 15, that were like, I could easily compete at this level, but they can't, obviously, and they have to wait. So it's like, oh man, you've missed out. It's different to other sports, man, I think as well. Like it's unlikely you'll see someone at 15 because they don't have the physical capabilities to keep up with a lot of these adults, you know. So, but in gaming, you can sort of like, if you've got those massive veiny forearms, man, you can destroy anybody, you know. So, yeah,
you know, governments are never going to catch up with esports. I feel like it's safe to say they got bigger fish to fry right now. So it's not like it's not like, you know, you and I are going to be able to step in front of Brussels and say, hey, it's really important that the EU fixes passports and gaming regulations to allow younger players to, you know, they don't care about that at all. I know one of my buddies helps run. Well, I know the guy who helps run Liquipedia, and he's an expert in the rules for competitive gaming tournaments, and that's like his like very niche area of expertise. And every time a tournament releases, you know, the rule book, the thing that no one ever reads, that's just like 10 pages of disclaimers and legal jargon. He's the guy who goes through all of those and advises them, hey, you can't say this, you can't say this, you got to fix this because right now your tournament's technically illegal in Bulgaria because they have like this specific rule about whatever. It's this hugely fraught area that I think they're not paying enough attention to right now.
I think here they recently just, I think in the next year or two, they've now got to change the games that come over to the UK because is it like the loot box thing is like considered as gambling now or something like that. So now games have to like either just have downloadable content you pay for, or the game that you have to get free stuff essentially. So I can think which one they're going to opt for, but yeah, like it's crazy, man. I understand what they're saying. Like at a young age, kids are paying for stuff and they're wanting to get really good loot. it can be construed as gambling, but it's definitely a debatable topic whether, companies should be allowed to do it or not. So
I was really amazed that the UK government actually took action on that, but I think it's because it's so understandable for your lawmakers in Parliament. It's very easy to say, hey, to explain what a loot box is, because it's just like pulling the handle of a fruit machine, right?
yeah,
And so that they can easily say these kids are pouring money from their parents' credit cards into this. The parents don't know about it. We got to do something about it. And it's like an easily accessible solution.
oh yeah,
But to get into something like the age of a gamer and their competitiveness in the industry and how that should affect visa status, and like that's gonna
crazy.
be super complicated. But I was really happy that they passed the stuff about loot box, because loot boxes are garbage.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, well that's it. It's the same as, I think FIFA is one of the worst ones here. Like again, a few of my mates are hardcore FIFA fans, as little as I cannot stand it. But it's the same. Like it's like you pay for like a card of like a whatever player you get and stuff, and some kids are just firing money into this to try and get like Ronaldo or Messi or whatever. It's
the cards come in packs, right? So you open the pack, and it's like Pokemon cards where you might get a good. Okay, yeah. I've never played FIFA. I just see the memes on Reddit about FIFA teams, and I never understand, because I've never played like a sports game in my life. So
you're not missing out. Not for football anyway.
I got center forward with this stat. What are the odds? And I'm like, I don't know. I know like two of those words.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I'm trying to think of it in like, I guess StarCraft don't really. They've got their boxes that you'll get your skins and stuff for. I'm trying to think of like
you build a team though, right?
Yeah. And
you have to keep them under budget or what? I don't know.
Anyway. Yeah, I think it's like different ones, but yeah, that's the sort of way it looks like it's going. But I don't know. It's even games that do like you get so much of the game, then you got to buy DLC to get more. Like I'm probably gonna sound like an old man here, but like paying like 40 quid for a game and actually getting the game, like I don't know. That's a lot of money to pay for a game to then play like a season and then go, if you want more, you got to pay another 15. I don't know. It sounds like a lot,
Yeah, I mean, game companies are in a weird spot, because if you want to produce a AAA game, you've got to have, at this point, to be competitive in the industry, you've got to be paying the best people and hundreds of them to be making this content, if not thousands. And then, of course, with everything being online, you got to pay for servers, which is a continuous cost. You got to pay for support, which is a continuous cost. So I know the game companies are in a weird spot, and a lot of them are having troubles and cutting corners left and right to keep those game prices low. But at the same time, we as consumers are in a rough spot as well, where we don't want to pay crazy amounts of money for one game. So
what do you think the likelihood is of there being like another RTS game that's like super competitive? It feels like I was going to say the genre's dead, but like for new games to come out, it feels like they know that games like StarCraft and Warcraft, things like that, these are, okay, Warcraft is Reforged and stuff, but these are like the pinnacle of like RTS games. And it's almost like I feel when people come in to create that game type, they have to best that what's being created. And when you look at like Blizzard and StarCraft, they've got like over 20 years of experience of like perfecting an RTS. So do you think like these companies are just, they don't see the money in it, or do you think it's just the fact that they don't think the consumer base is going to play it?
Yeah, both. I think both. RTS is a really interesting space, because I feel like for the first time, MOBAs are just like a straight up improvement of an RTS. Not that, again, I'm not saying they're better than RTS games. They're very different. But I think from a consumer standpoint, it looks like the next iteration. It's like going from black and white to color in movies. There's nothing about a black and white movie that's intrinsically better than a color movie. I mean, our artists don't at me, because I understand black and white has its place. But, it feels like the next step where you still have the best elements from an RTS, and you're still trying to like build your characters out, but at the same time you've added on this new mechanic that really changes the whole way the game works. Secondly, of course, Blizzard, the king of RTS games. No one can compete with them. And I don't want to say that StarCraft 2 is like the pinnacle of the art form, but with an isometric top-down RTS game, I can't imagine what an improvement over StarCraft 2 would look like. I mean, you could add in some new mechanics here and there to maybe shift things around a little bit or change the focus of the game, but I think it would be very difficult to create an experience as rich and fulfilling in this specific genre. Yeah, that beats it. At the risk of, again, going into the movie comparison, but I mean, StarCraft 2 is the godfather of mob films. It's like the ultimate expression of the art form. And And I don't know if there's anything to go around it.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's going to make an RTS again. It's the same way I don't think anybody's going to make a real MMO again.
yeah. Hey, well, there's
You know,
what was the two that recently announced? Well, say recently, I think they announced that a while ago. I think Amazon, they said they're creating one that's like they're spending an absolute obscene amount of money on.
good luck,
Um,
Bezos.
yeah, I know, and I think there was another one that's Lord of the Rings one too. Like it's a
Oh,
bit
Lord.
like they did one before, but I think this is more like I can't remember. There was like a price point on it. It was like 1 billion or something. It was an obscene amount of money was getting spent on it. So it was like, well, maybe. But
I mean,
again,
good luck.
yeah,
But as somebody who played the crap out of World of Warcraft, I can tell you again, that's everything you could possibly want from MMO. These days, out of the game's not in a very healthy spot. But it's just one of those evolutions where I think we're going to see most games now have some sort of MMO element to it. Like if you want, like I've never played Red Dead Redemption, but from what I understand there's like this huge main quest that you go through, and then if you want to hop online and play with other people, you can. Same with like Grand Theft Auto 5, where you can do it on your own, but the real fun is getting online and playing with other people.
yeah,
And I think the industry is sort of trending toward that. Have an online mode, which if you want to play the MMO section, great. Or if you want to play on your own, that's what the game's built for. Yeah, I don't see anybody else making another RTS. We'll see the remasters when we have Command and Conquer's come back remastered, Warcraft
Yeah.
3 reforged. That's it. Like, what else are we gonna see?
I know. I mean, the Command and Conquer and stuff was great. I like, yeah.
Did you
Just
dig
spent-
into it? Did you play it
yeah.
all?
Well, when they released the original one again, that was like not the remake. It was like they just released the original game and you could play it for free.
Nice.
So like I was sitting playing that for ages, and then that one came out, and I was like, I've already played that one, but I still just had to buy it. Just be that consumer. Just I had to. So, but I'm just sitting there toggling with spacebar like between the old and the new view, just like this is amazing. This is how it looked like. This looks.
I watched Day 9 play the remastered version.
But yeah.
And when he found out that the command to change from the old graphics to new graphics was spacebar, he paused the game and went on this huge rant for like 15 minutes. He was like, "That is the worst design decision I've ever seen. The most important button in the world
It's so good.
for an RTS game, and you make it toggle graphics? What?"
It's absolutely beautiful. It honestly was like so appealing when I realized what it was, and it was. I watched Artosa stream it as well, and there was one bit I think it was probably clipped, so you could probably go back and see it in the stream. But he's trying to strat. He's playing against someone online, and he's rushing somebody with like just Marines on the ground, and he's completely beating him. And the guy starts chasing him with his harvester and just runs over his dudes at the last second, and he just gets furious. And honestly, like I could have died with laughter. It was just too funny.
I'm sure somebody clipped that. I think I saw the clip of him. Like, yeah, let's make this the strongest unit. What's that? Oh, Artosis.
Oh, it's so good. You gotta love it, man. I could like Taste Oasis, like Day 9, like that's somebody that I'm still hoping one day he just comes back out of nowhere and just goes, Psh, well, I'll do some StarCraft again, man. And I can, like when he does his card games and stuff, I just stick his stream on and listen to him, man, because he's like, it's just his voice. It's just so like chill. Like I don't even watch like him play. Like I don't really like the card games he plays. It's just chill.
If you want a dose of that, Day 9 did cast one day of the TSL 5, the Team Liquid Star League.
Oh, really?
It just happened a few months ago. So he did one day and he cast with maybe Rotterdam, I think. But they brought it back for one day because the TSL is like an old tournament. They did like four Team Liquid Star Leagues at the beginning of StarCraft. And the last one was like 2012 or something. And then this year they had the fifth one. So it was an 8-year break.
Oh,
and to sort of celebrate, they brought Day 9 back for one day.
Oh, man. See, I
And
love
it's funny,
like the...
He
Oh,
really
sorry.
hasn't been following StarCraft, so he had no idea what was going on. He was like making bad calls. And it was really impressive because, again, I think Rotterdam was his co-caster. And it was really impressive to hear Rotterdam like very politely dancing around the fact that he had just said something really dumb. So he'd be like, he'd make some terrible, he's probably going for this strategy. And Rotterdam would be like, yeah, we haven't seen that strategy since about 2014. I'd be surprised if that's what he was going for, but it does look very, one of those sort of things.
That's brilliant. It's so good to see like chemistry like that when folk are casting, man. But like going down that rabbit hole of like, especially there's the old videos that were online of like Taste Oasis and Day 9, and it was like them playing the very early like I can't remember what they're called. It's like World Something series. It was like
World Championship.
Yeah, and I remember like going back and watching it, and it all stemmed off of like I think it was Day 9's 100th episode, and I'd like watched him like after this, but watch like all the stuff he says like matches the video that he's like with them playing at this tournament. And man, I could have sat and watched those videos forever. And it's also I think when like Tasteless like started his casting career. Man,
Right.
I was sold. I was sold into the story of like the early StarCraft days, man. It's just brilliant.
Everything has changed so much. I mean, from the early days, because as you said, the story of Tasteless casting is that he was at one of the events. He got knocked out early in the event, and then they had some like local like baseball broadcaster come on, and he was like trying to explain what was happening. Had no idea, and Tasteless just walked up to the event organizer and was like, "Hey, do you want me to help that guy out and like sort of tell him what's happening in the game?" And they're like, "Oh, sure. Here's a microphone. Go nuts."
Yeah.
And and now the entire esport and the whole genre of esports, the whole industry has just changed so much, where there are these clear paths to, if you want to become a professional
Top
in this
tier,
industry,
yeah.
there are ways to get there now, that it's not just be at an event and get lucky.
It's funny. I remember like Day9 in that episode, he did like the impression of the guy who didn't know what he was doing. He says he even remembers him being like, "Man, those." It's like Mike's his mouth. He's like, "Those Marines, they shoot up, they shoot down. Where don't they shoot? You know?" It's just like, it's like imagine casting a game where you just don't know what's going on, man. It's like me casting a basketball game. I just be like, "Yep, he's getting that ball in the hoop, man. Yep, he's doing good." It's like,
It's like me when I was trying to play League of Legends earlier this year, and I was like, I couldn't imagine casting it, because I was like, wow, yep, that tree guy, he's casting a fireball or something. Look at that. Wow, he's okay. Wow.
that's brilliant, man. So normally what I do towards the end is like I tell people I'm streaming that I'm interviewing yourself, and I let them ask questions and things like that. So if you're up for it, I've just got like a list of questions that are like, they're not really related, they're just random questions. So, if that's cool.
What do people want to know?
Cool. So the first question was, who's your favorite streamer?
My favorite streamer. That's a great question. Picking one would be hard. I'll do one that I haven't talked about yet, but I really love. There's a streamer who does Diablo 2 streams named Mr. Llama.
Okay.
And he's really cool because he's very friendly. He's very personable, which is kind of what I go for on my stream. I'm not trying to be hardcore and exciting. I'm just trying to be friendly and personal and talk about the game. And he has such a rich knowledge of Diablo 2, and his streams are always really interesting to watch. So he does some speed runs most of the time for D2, but he also has fun events where he'll do like he does one called Man versus Stream, which is where people can donate, and when they donate, he has wheels on stream that like one of the wheels will spin, and it'll land on like drop your whatever your weapon is, drop your weapon, or put on an oven mitt on your mouse hand to try and play with an oven mitt on. Or, and so, like, the whole trying to prevent him from finishing his speed run, and it's always good for a laugh. But
that's really clever.
He's one of my favorites because he's smart and he explains himself really well. And every stream, if you ask him a question in chat, he's usually good about, "Oh, okay, you must be new here. Everybody else knows this, but let me take a minute to explain because you're new." Like a very welcoming atmosphere. So he's good at his game. He's good at streaming, and he's really good as an entertainer as well.
That's good. That's one thing you mentioned before, like when we were saying like being able to play like well and be able to like convey to others what you're doing. I had like I just did not appreciate how difficult that was previously. Like I'm playing it like average level at best when I'm playing games. When I'm chatting, it falls even below that. You know, it's just I'm seeing people that are like, especially like I think Robbie does it really well. Like he's playing Warcraft, he'll be like, "You do this, you do that," and you'll just trash a guy. And I'm like, wait, how can you honestly like think about what you're doing in the game, tell others what you're doing and what you're away? It just blows my mind, man.
Robbie is on another level, man. I don't think anybody who doesn't follow Warcraft 3 understands. Like there have been, if I recall correctly, there have been Warcraft 3 tournaments before that have specifically said everyone except Grubby is invited, because if we invite Grubby, he's going, like, there's no point in even having the tournament anymore. I think the joke is the reason he got into casting is somebody asked him to cast because they didn't want him to play. So they can have other people. He is on another freaking plane of existence on Warcraft 3. Just untouchable.
It's really, again, it's great to watch. And like you'll see his win-loss every time I go on. It's like 7 wins, 1 loss. You're like, man, yeah. And you know that one game was like someone cheesed him. You know, he didn't lose. Next one was who's your favorite caster to cast with?
My favorite caster to cast. Oh, again, that's a crappy question. Come on,
can't
make me pick favorites. Well, you know what? I casted DreamHack just last week and the week before with this British caster named Grant, and he's a lot of fun. We get along really well. That was a good time. So I guess just based on the last 2 weeks alone, casting with Grant's a ton of fun.
That's a good segment.
But honestly, I have yet to cast with anyone who was unpleasant, you know? Even, I don't know, and this sort of goes back to your background, but my background is not in competitive esports. My background is in improvisational theater and performing arts and stuff. So when I'm doing a cast with somebody else, basically I'm just trying, like the goal when you're doing an improv with someone else is to set them up to be funny. And that's your goal. It's like if you can load up a joke and give it to the other person and help them just like knock it out of the park, that's the whole goal. And so when I'm casting with somebody else, the whole point is to make sure that they feel comfortable and they're doing a joke. And a good co-caster is somebody who does that for you as well. And I'm really fortunate to cast with a lot of people. Artosis, No Regret, Zombie Grub, even Rifkin was decent at it. Just to sort of be able to throw you, it's not a joke in StarCraft 2, but if you throw somebody an easy question for analysis or set them up to answer a question in the middle of a match that they're very comfortable talking about, that's what really makes a good co-caster. And the StarCraft scene is just full of them.
This is, I mean, most one of my questions. But if you actually like casted with somebody who is like a player, maybe even, because I feel maybe sometimes players might not have the social aspect. Sometimes they love the knowledge base, but sometimes, again, like you say, you'll chuck a question or something at them, and I feel like if you have poor chemistry and you just go, "What's this?" or "What's that?" and they can't really bounce off them, they give you like a one-word answer or something. Is anything like that sort of happened to you? Like, don't name names, but just.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of people I've worked with that have, understood the strategy and of a game much better than I do, but not understood the communication aspect of being a caster. I'll give you a great example, and this is I think is fair. I just did a tournament a while ago that was completely fan funded. And one of the donation incentives was if you gave $100 or more to the prize pool, then you could co-cast a game with me. And it's that'll be fun. Just get a fan in here. And so those guys, the two guys I had on that did the co-casting with me, were awesome. And I know them both, and they're both super friendly. But they didn't really have the same flow that a professional caster would have. And so very often, I had to, it was really an exercise for me as well, because I really had to work on making sure that they knew it was their time to speak, and like giving them, because a lot of times I'd be like, in a professional cast, one of the clues that your caster wants you to talk is if you say their name at the end of it.
Okay.
So if we were casting a game together, I'd be like, "Wow, he's got a hell of an army here, NerdShredz," and you'd go, "Yeah, he does, Creighton. That's right. Look, that's like an easy cue. Okay, now it's my turn to talk." But I worked with those guys who I just slipped my mind that they're not professional casters. They weren't. A couple of times they'd be like, "And wow, look at all those banelings." Silence. Yeah. Silence.
They just poke him.
Oh, he's got all the banelings here. What do you think about all these banelings he's got? What is he going to do? And like reframe it as a question.
I did actually wonder something, especially like high level casters. I guess you just get into a rhythm as well if you're like Tastosis, like the best. It's like you probably just get into a rhythm. But I do like wonder sometimes how they don't like always go and they'll both like speak at the same time, like, and he's going, "Oh no, you go first." Oh no, no, like how often would that actually happen? But never seems to happen, So yeah.
Especially for live events, it's happening on the online events sometimes because there's a little bit of delay, of course, and when you can't see somebody's face and you can't read their body language, it becomes much more difficult to communicate. And I think a lot of people think about esports casting in terms of the esport and the strategy and the competitiveness, and you forget that what you're actually doing is performing and communicating. And so you have to think about body language and intent and like framing things in a specific way. Yeah. And body language is a huge one that we're missing right now with all these offline events due to coronavirus. So
yeah, I never even thought of that actually. Yeah.
A lot of people I think online are being like, because StarCraft is a community famous for people going, "Oh, I like these casters together. I don't like these casters together. This caster sucks. I love this whatever." And online events is a very different vibe because you gotta find people who are really clued into what their people are saying. Yeah.
Well, there's always for like, I used to get confused over how, well, let's say confused, I just like thought, how do they really coordinate between like big fights? Like one of the examples was like one of the most iconic like StarCraft fights. It was like that Squirtle MVP fight ages ago. And I remember like how like Tastosis are both like, they're both taking turns chatting right before the fight. And as soon as the fight kicks off, like Artosis just goes off and he goes mental, and I'm like, how do you actually decide like who's gonna go, "Oh, these guys are the BCs," and he just goes it gets more and more and more, and it's just, I always was like, how can you not be like, "No, I want it, I'm gonna." It's just like
it's really complex caster like equation math you're doing in your head, where because you're trying to trade off in like roughly equal sound bites. So I don't know what the actual talking for 30 seconds at a time feels normal for your casting crew.
Yep.
So usually I'll try and talk for about 30 seconds and talk about what I've seen and then bring up a new interesting point and then hand it off to my co-caster, who will then respond to that point, talk about it for a little while, set up a new point, and hand it over to me. And so you're kind of juggling between how long have I been talking before this fight starts?
Mm-hmm.
And then did I cast the last big fight? Is it his turn to cast it? And sometimes you have to consciously think about these things when you're working with a new caster. Obviously, Tasteless and Artosis, just it's front of mind.
Yeah.
But you'll hear like Grant and I, for example, because we'd never casted before last week together. So a lot of times before a big fight, we'd say something like, "Wow, he's setting up for a big fight here, Grant. What do you think's going to happen?" And then he'll set him up there. He'll get the idea that like, okay, I got this fight. This one's mine, and then he'll hand it to me. The BCs are coming in, Creighton. It looks like th're going down south, and you're like, yes, they are, and here's what's happening. So,
yeah, that's crazy. Just sort of like
going on.
They sort of take that for granted when you're sort of thinking this must be easy. You're just chatting about the game, but it's so many elements to it. Okay, sorry.
I used to get mad when people were online would be like, "Oh, Creighton's a terrible caster. I don't like this, this, and this." And then I realized that the people that complain about bad casting just don't understand like how it functions.
It was the same with do you remember Total Biscuit?
Oh yeah,
because like when I used to go to DreamHack, he casted quite a bit. That's how long ago it was, and again, he obviously knew StarCraft, but because he did so many different games and so many different elements that you'd see a lot of people online would be like, this guy doesn't know StarCraft and stuff. But like the way he conveyed the game, like sometimes you still would say some things that you're like, if you watched a lot of StarCraft, you probably wouldn't say that. But like it's still like he would still understand the chemistry of like chatting with someone else and commentating a game with someone, and that in a lot of cases is way bigger than knowing the game inside out. And then again, like I say, you're like fighting for airtime when you're chatting, it doesn't make sense.
People always forget that they're not the only person watching a StarCraft 2 game, and like my commentary is not tailored toward you. I don't care. I'm trying to catch as many people as I can. Mm-hmm. And just because you like to hear about the strategy, I'll get to as much as I can, but there are 50,000 other people who care about the excitement of the fight or the build order they don't understand or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was the next question? Sorry, what's your favorite StarCraft unit?
Oh, I've got a great answer for that. I have two favorite StarCraft units.
Okay.
And they're like even on how much I love them. Probably first, and people are always surprised, Concussive Shell Marauders.
Okay.
I love them.
You got to add the Concussive Shell in there just to...
They have to be concussive. Well, that's the thing. Marauders are Concussive Shell Marauders, though I love. They slow everything down. And the reason I love this is so nerdy, but the reason I love them, one of my favorite things about StarCraft 2 is the affordances in the game. Affordances is like a game design term that basically says an affordance is something that tells you how to interact with something, or it gives you information about how something works. Mm-hmm. And Marauders, actually, when they normally shoot, their grenades have like an orange trail behind them. And when they get upgraded to Concussive Shell, they have like a blue trail behind them. So it's like this very tiny thing where if you look at it, and that's how you can know immediately they're Concussive Shell Marauders. Like whether or not you can see your units getting slowed down, you can still tell, okay, Concussive Shell Marauders are on the field. Now I got to know. StarCraft is one of the best games at giving players very specific affordances for every upgrade. So that's one reason I love Concussive Shell Marauders. They're also really badass. And then my second other favorite unit is Burrowed Banelings, because there is literally nothing higher in the echelon of StarCraft excitement than focusing your camera on two Burrowed Banelings and watching 50 Marines walk over them, because you're just like, yes, 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 yes. Ooh.
Yeah, that's pretty satisfying to watch, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, it's good. Doesn't get better than that.
You say like subtle, what was it? It was the fusion core. That's what I was trying to think of. Like looking at buildings when they're subtly upgrading. That's what it was. Yeah. And it was like you just see it makes a little
fusion core dance.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's so well designed, and the people and again, one of the other reasons we'll never see another RTS probably ever like it is because it's just the pinnacle of the art form. I mean, every single bit of it is so well intentioned and so well designed from so many different levels.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the StarCraft players, who do you think's most promising? Like new up and coming?
Ooh, new up and coming. Good question. I can't say Raynor anymore because he was like for a brief time last week he was number one in the world, so he's not like an up and
not anymore. Not.
He's great. He literally did an interview last week where they said, "Are you the best in the world?" And he said, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah.
From Raynor, who doesn't count. There are a couple really interesting talents coming up. Max Pax, we talked about earlier, this young Danish kid who's very promising. He's still in the phase of his career where he's experimenting with cheesy strategies, probably a little too much.
Okay.
But his mechanics behind that are really solid. And I find that players who are creative when they're younger go on to be a lot more a lot more impressive later in life. Like innovation as a player who's never been creative, and he's always been near the top of his game, but never like right on top because he's never going to surprise you with anything. I mean, rarely going to surprise you with anything. He's just mechanically
really sound. Yeah.
But there's a reason that like Serral, Rayner, Maru, those guys are on top of the world because every 4 or 5 games they're going to pull something wild out, or they're going to be able to understand what's going on. So I think Max Pax has real promise. There's this young Russian kid named Vanya, who is really exciting. Then like he's playing in all the online tournaments right now and just ripping through him. And he's 16, 17 maybe. I don't know if you're looking him up right now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just to keep a note so I can actually like look them up. I've heard of Max Pax obviously, but I've never heard of this guy before. No.
Max Pax, Vanya is playing all these online cups and just destroying.
Okay.
He was in DreamHack, I think, or maybe he was too young for DreamHack.
He's been playing since 2018, according to this. So he's been playing a while.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's really impressive. Those are probably 2 that I keep my eyes on. I'm trying to think if there's any other like young up and comers that are notable. Yeah, those 2 I think for the most part in the EU scene, pretty good. And then I mean, as far as players who I don't think are ever going to be top tier, but who are like filling out the scene really well, that's one of the reasons StarCraft is doing really well right now. Is there are probably 100 players who are never going to be GSL champs, who are never going to fly to Korea to live the esports dream, but who are incredible players, who are coming up through this system, these teams like Alpha X, the team that I'm on, has a ton of players who are never going to be like world number 1, but are always going to be scary when you come up against them in a bracket, or always going to be like putting up online events and stuff. And right now the scene has a lot of those players, especially in EU and North America, that are sort of bubbling up and adding just this critical mass of really good players that's forcing everyone to stay on top of their game.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
What race do you think is the strongest now?
No, I'm not answering that. That's bait. I know bait when I see it. Genuinely, when the new map pool came out last month, and I was casting games on some of the new maps, I would see, and I shit you not, during the same game, I would see in chat somebody would say, "Oh, this is such a bullshit Protoss map," and then like 10 comments later, it would be, "Oh, this map is so Terran favored, it's not funny." And then the next comment, like 15 down, would be like, "Oh, Zerg players are gonna have so much fun on this map. It's gonna be so easy for Zerg players to win." And I see that all the time.
Yeah.
Protoss is overrated, Terran's overrated, Zerg's overrated. The game is in such a healthy spot right now. I really don't think. I mean, maybe Protoss a little bit weaker just because their results aren't as good, but that's because Korean Protoss players have never really been the scariest in the world.
It's been like the lowest out of 3, I think. Yeah, for Koreans, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talk about different maps. I remember like really early on there was like from like my understanding of maps was like if it's big, Zerg love it because they can just expand everywhere. That was like my knowledge. And then I remember really early on there was like a map where like Terran could actually put like siege tanks on ledges and things like that, and it was like out of range for stuff. I remember that being absolutely crazy. And then apart from that, I used to be like maps don't really matter that much, and then in every pro game it's like that's a really good map for her, and I'm like how, like again I just never really understood why it was good,
Yeah, and that's something that again where I'm like a color guy. I need an analysis guy who has played this map 400 times and can say, man, I always lose when the player goes this specific build, puts his tanks here, and that means I can't get on top. Like there's obviously some cool strategy. Some cool strategy stuff going on. But one big thing is that our map makers are also getting incredibly good at making maps. Where there used to be maps where there was one abusive spot where, as you said, siege tanks get on this ledge, you can't do anything about it. GG. But we've seen so many hundreds of maps now in StarCraft 2. That these map makers are just incredible.
Yeah,
and our map pool right now is really healthy. All the maps are really interesting without being like wacky, which is a good place for StarCraft maps to be.
Yeah, I quite like the like tiny element changes of like a slow warp field and things like that. They're not like absolutely game changing. They're obviously mirrored as well, so like it's but yeah, stuff like that keeps the game like fresh as well. I think that's a good show.
Oh man, absolutely.
What's the worst video game that you've ever played?
The worst video game I've ever played. Oh man. Oh, that's a really rich question. A long time ago, somebody convinced me to buy Left 4 Dead 2.
Okay.
And I hated it.
You hate it?
It combined everything I didn't like about video games. It was horror, which I don't like to begin with. It was a first-person shooter, which I'm terrible at and dislike. It was like a team-based thing, an online thing, which again I'm really bad at because I'm not that competitive. And it wasn't the worst game in the world. I just didn't like it at
It just wasn't
all.
for you, yeah.
It was garbage. No.
So no
The
more
worst
Left 4
game
Dead purchases.
is ET for Atari, which is one of the worst games in the world. And then if you ever watch Awesome Games Done Quick, they often do an awful block of like the worst games,
Oh,
and those
okay.
are all just amazing. There's some garbage video games.
I've just googled ET for Atari, man. That is.
Oh, have you heard the story about ET for Atari?
No. I've never even heard of the game.
Waste your time, but they're like documentaries about this. That
really?
game almost single-handedly caused the downfall of the video game explosion in the late 80s.
How come?
Atari thought it was going to be the huge bestseller. And at the time, the development cycle for a video game was like a couple of months, where like one guy would write the entire game, start to finish, and they'd ship it off in time for Christmas or whatever. So apparently, Atari got the rights for E.T. just after the movie came out in the summer.
Okay.
And like made the game between like August and October, and then had to ship it off for Christmas sales. And so the game is so bad, but they thought so E.T. is attached to it, and E.T. was the biggest movie in the world at the time. And they thought since E.T. is attached to it, it's going to be a huge game. And I can't remember, they printed like 8 million copies of it or something and sold like 140,000 because it was so bad. So there's famously, there's a dump in Arizona in the United States somewhere that apparently they just took. It was cheaper to just throw away all the cartridges, put them in the dump, than it was to try and sell them. So,
oh wow.
And that's what caused Atari to like sort of bust, and then a lot of smaller companies shut down because they couldn't support it. There's this huge. I know there's a documentary about it. It used to be on Netflix, I think.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. I'm actually going to Google that too.
If you want to go down the rabbit hole of ET, it's fascinating. But it's famously one of the worst games in video game history.
I've now just got like 5 tabs of like stuff that I need to like Google and I got it.
I'm making you interested in other things.
Yeah, I'm definitely the keep talking and nobody explodes one. That's definitely something I'm gonna rage at later. So that's good.
Get a friend that you either like a lot or hate a lot, and that'll be a great game.
I hate will be definitely. Okay, sorry. And the last question is, if you'd be professional at any other video game apart from StarCraft, what would it be?
Oh. Professional at any other video game apart from StarCraft, what would it be? I've heard that Rocket League needs some good commentators. Whenever I ask my friends, if I was like, if I was going to commentate another game, what would I do? They always say, man, Rocket League needs some good commentators because the Rocket League commentators suck, which I've never watched. I've never really watched professional Rocket League. But I've always I enjoy playing it every now and then. So maybe Rocket League, but
I've never seen like the pro scene. I can't really. I mean, I guess it could be the same as like any football or soccer commentary, really. But yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it's just my friends being jerks about the sport they love so much.
Sorry, yeah, and finally, I normally just like to finish off by like giving something back to like the community by just sort of like asking if there was someone that's like wanting to try and pursue a similar career to you in like esports and casting. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, a great question. Usually, I try and give advice that they might not have heard before, because I talked about it a little bit earlier. That most people, when they want to become a commentator and they ask, people say, well, learn the players, get really good at the game, maybe compete professionally, practice. So I'll give advice that very few other people give. If you want to be an esports commentator, look up improv classes in your local area once COVID's over. Go study improvisational comedy and how to like improv a conversation with someone else. Study the performing arts. Do research on how communication happens. Like how do you communicate with another human effectively? Because so many people will get into it, and when you watch like Home Story Cup, you'll watch the pro try and commentate a game, and it's fascinating and interesting in its own way, but it doesn't have any of those hallmarks of commentary that you really need. So if you're looking to get into esports commentary and you want to be really good at it, my advice is study theater, go perform somewhere, learn how to project your voice, learn how to take care of your voice, learn how to do improvisational comedy, learn how to set up someone else to make a joke, learn how to hold a conversation, and talk. Practice talking by yourself and with other people.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's great. A lot of people do say like, you should be playing at a high level in order to cast. But yeah, the Home Story Cup, that's quite. Whenever you see the pros try and cast, I actually like them when they cast because they'll do like they'll go so in depth to a strat, and this is why he's done this. And again, some casters won't pick it up, but his brain again is in it 150%. It's just like how. Yeah, and then that's quite interesting to me, you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And like the once a year we get Home Story Cup, that's awesome. That's exactly what you want, is just the players drunk talking about the strategies.
Yeah.
But I feel like if that happened every tournament, you know, people would finally go, oh man, this is really dense. It's just too much. And they never, you know, I feel like the game, my favorite Home Story Cups are always when like something crazy's happening on stream and any other casting team, both casters would be like shouting about it. Oh, this is crazy. He's doing a thing. At the Home Story Cup, all of them are on the couch just quiet going, huh, okay. Oh yeah, so he made 4 banings instead of 3. Yeah, that's going to be GG. Okay, cool. And that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
No excitement at all.
But yeah, I actually like the couch analysis and that. Like, and it is like you say, it's a bit different and it's more chill. But yeah, if you did that every tournament, it'd sort of just be like, all right, no one's taking it seriously, sort of thing, you know. But
sure.
yeah, it's a good change. Well, dude, I think I've taken enough of your time as it is.
Hey,
but
no problem. We went a little over. That's awesome. I had a great time chatting with you, man.
So like I said, thanks for taking time out to chat to us. Do you want to like land people where people can find you, your casts, your tournaments, everything?
Oh yeah. I'm easy to find. When I cast it, the first time I cast professionally, I went in and they said, "Oh, Creighton, what's your online gaming? Like, what's your online gaming name? Like, we've got Artosis, we've got Tasteless. What's your name?" And I said, "Oh, I don't have one. I'm not a famous gamer. I'm just Creighton Olsen." So anywhere you want to find me, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, it's just Creighton Olsen, and I'm sure you can find the spellings somewhere.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe. It really helps me and the channel out a lot. And it also keeps you up to date with all the new guests too. Cheers. See ya.